Hi, I'm James Wedmore, host of the Mind Your Business podcast, and I've built an 8-figure-a-year company selling digital products around my knowledge and expertise. In fact, this is what I've been doing in multiple niches for the past 15 years. And if you've ever wanted to do the same, or maybe you're trying but you can't seem to get any traction, here's how I can help. As you can guess, you need an audience if you want to sell your stuff, right? But what if I told you that you don't need a big audience? You don't need millions of followers to get started. In fact, we see that it's with just your first 100 leads where you really start getting some momentum. I mean, think about it. Imagine that you're on the stage of a room filled with just 100 people in that audience right now. That's a lot of people. You don't think that a few of them would walk up to you after your talk and ask, "Hey, how can I keep working with you?" Of course they would. And that's why I created Your First 100 Leads. It's a 14-video step-by-step training mini course that walks you through exactly how to get your first 100 leads fast. And the feedback and results from this free program have been amazing. Diane Shepard said, "This is one of the best trainings I've ever taken." Jake Curry said, "We have had 753 people sign up for this free training. Are you kidding me?" Dan Netting said, "I'm currently going through the first 100 leads training, and James, I gotta say, it's brilliant. This training is A to Z complete, and the best part is it's absolutely free." To register, simply click the link in the show notes of this episode. Thanks so much, and I'll see you there.
My husband and I literally finished a whole conversation, as we do every new year. Are we going to wait this year? What are our plans? What are our big goals? And we had decided that. And the next day I took a pregnancy test and found out I was expecting. So the universe has a sense of humor. And obviously it was such a big blessing. However, pregnancy was extremely difficult for me. Like, I was just very ill, very not myself, very depressed. And I'm sure that there's probably many women that can relate to that as well. So I don't think of it as just new mom kind of experience the last 8.5 months, but even the pregnancy itself and what that changed in my business was a lot. And I mean, I just want to give props to all of the mothers out there, because it is not just like that having a baby and then you have a baby. It's all the other parts of it too.
Hey, and welcome to the Ambitious Bookkeeper podcast. I'm Serena Shoup, CPA, a mom of 3, and I've been running a virtual bookkeeping business from my home since 2017. You are in the right place if you are a bookkeeper, accountant, or an accounting student, and you believe and know in your heart that your purpose is bigger than sitting in a cubicle. If you're ready to learn some actionable tips and strategies for starting and growing your accounting business, then I hope you stick around. Welcome back to the Ambitious Bookkeeper podcast. Today, I have a special guest, Jessica Parr, and we met on Threads, which was kind of random because I don't really go on there much. But welcome, Jessica. I'm going to have you just introduce yourself, and then we'll go from there.
Yeah, sure. I mean, thank you so much for having me on the pod. And I only started using Threads recently too. So I've just made so many amazing connections, and I'm excited to chat with your audience. But I am an online business mentor for female entrepreneurs. I recently also just became a mama, so we have lots in common. And yeah, I can't wait to just dive right in.
Yeah. So start with I guess a little background on how you got into becoming an online business mentor. Did you work in corporate? What's your story? I always like to know. I like to dig into people's stories because someone in the audience is going to relate. So,
I mean, it's a ride. I was always quite academic and I wanted to do a lot of different things. I just didn't know what I wanted to do. So I went to university. I went to college after university. I was still trying to figure it out. And I was on the side, I was coaching equestrian athletes because that was something I grew up doing competitively. And so what happened after I spent a lot of time kind of procrastinating with school, I decided to try freelancing and doing that on my own. And I actually did that for all of my 20s, so about a decade. and grew my own business. I like to say I fell through entrepreneurship. It was not planned, and I had made so many bumps along the road and mistakes, but I grew that business to a 6-figure business, and it was thriving and amazing and kind of like what I wanted as a dream, but it was so demanding physically and mentally. And by about 2019, when I was running clients at high level competition all the time and traveling, at the end of that season, I burned out so badly that I was in and out of the hospital for about 6 months, and I couldn't function. I couldn't work. I couldn't do anything. And it was quite a visceral experience. And I can talk about it lightly now, but back then it was very traumatic. But what happened was it became kind of like this catalyst for me diving into personal development and the entire kind of time that I had been an entrepreneur and pouring myself into work and being seen as successful and making a certain amount of money, I had really been disconnecting and dissociating from myself. And so that was kind of a forced moment where I had to reconsider what success looked like for me and get really into, mind-body connection, how the things that we, think and how we kind of create our own realities based on the patterns of our thoughts, heal some trauma from my entire life that I was ignoring. And so that was a pivotal moment where I decided I really wanted to do something bigger with my career and work with women who were more alike, work with clients who had bigger dreams and make more of an impact. And so I started at that point kind of testing the waters with what I was doing in my business. And as of last year, in fact, the same month that I had my baby last year was the first month I actually fully transitioned out of that business and online, though I have been obviously serving female entrepreneurs in the online space for longer than that. But that is where we're at right now.
Wow. So you made that whole transition, you said right after you had your baby, or?
Yeah, well, the essentially I thought about it, and I definitely almost kind of I started my podcast in early 2020. I started, networking with more female entrepreneurs. I started doing in-person events and all of that whilst I was running my business in person with competition clients and being a professional writer and all of these other things. I probably in retrospect didn't need to pile everything on, but I really wanted to explore what that would look like for me. And at the end of 2022 is when I started working online specifically with women who were building their businesses. However, I had a machine. So it actually took a long time for me to kind of dismantle that. I ended up finding out I was pregnant at the beginning of 2023, and it accelerated the process. So I went as hard as I could. I hosted my first retreat when I was like 30 weeks pregnant. I spoke on stages about burnout when I was like 20 weeks pregnant. I'm like, I'm going to just do everything I can, like all in. And the month that I had my baby, I had him August 30th last year. September was the first month that I was full-time online. So I no longer was doing any more in-person services in my business. And I have been ever since.
Wow, that's incredible. So you have completely transitioned out of the coaching. Coaching writers? Is that what your business was? Okay. And now you're fully supporting online female entrepreneurs. So does that mean that you mainly work with other online business entrepreneurs, or is it just like that's your avenue for reaching other entrepreneurs, like other brick and mortar business owners?
Yeah, I have kind of as an offhand worked with other brick and mortars just because of my personal experience, and I love doing different things. But the majority and almost all of my clients have been online service providers. Many of them have like businesses where it is very much not necessarily selling digital products or anything like that, but they're delivering different services. So people who are into, somatics or fitness instructors, nutritionists, any kind of like specialists, even bookkeepers. There's a zillion different businesses that I support. However, it really is kind of always grounded in the fact that these are women who want to have more freedom by building their business and using and leveraging the online platforms in order to do that. So more clients make more money and have more scalable systems, which is essentially also part of why I pivoted and kind of what I do in my own work as well.
We'll be back after a quick break.
This episode of the Ambitious Bookkeeper podcast is sponsored by my brand new free training, The Ultimate Guide to Creating a Profitable Bookkeeping Business. In just 1 hour, you will learn 3 keys to creating and launching a profitable bookkeeping business. We will map out your path to creating a bookkeeping or accounting business that keeps you in control of your time, priorities, and expertise. From someone who built a 6-figure firm on part-time hours. That's right. You can stay in control of your time, keep family as your priority, and serve your clients well. It just takes a little strategy up front, and I'm going to help you with that during this free training. So head over to the show notes to sign up now for the next training and find out how you can choose the work you do, kick imposter syndrome to the curb, use tech to be super efficient, which all leads to a profitable business. Just head on over to ambitiousbookkeeper.com/training, and I will see you there. Yeah, I love working with online entrepreneurs too. It's just a different mindset of clients that you're dealing with, because I feel like a lot of us have done that internal work of like making sure that we're doing something that we're aligned with, which is what I think we're definitely going to dive into today. So can we talk a little bit about the ramifications of burnout? I don't know if I've touched on burnout on my podcast a little bit, but I haven't gone that deep into it. But I experienced something similar. Although I wasn't hospitalized, the last couple of years I got sick a lot.
I mean, yeah, 100%. I honestly think it manifests so differently for so many different people because it really is like an umbrella term. I don't think there's actually a real definition. If you Google it, or if you have like a male doctor define it for you, they're going to be like, you work too hard and now you're tired. But that is not the case. What have been my experience in talking to so many different women who have either ridden the line of being burnt out or actually just fully burnt out. And I think it really does. It's a combination for me and my business at the time. I was physically exhausting myself and pushing myself, but most of it honestly was very internal and mental. There's this thing when you are a young female entrepreneur where you do want your clients to be happy. And if you have the tendency to people please, you're making decisions that may not feel good and aren't in integrity. And you have certain demands that you're trying to meet with people, especially when it comes to then taking money in exchange for services. Maybe if you haven't done the work around your own personal worth, there's things that happen there where you're over delivering and you are basically, running yourself dry, trying to run a business and waking up one day wondering why you started your own business.
Yeah.
And I know that so many women have experienced that. So for me, I feel like there was just so much misalignment where I was burying myself in my job to avoid emotionally processing, spending any time with myself. And I wasn't kind of communicating authentically or working with people that were really aligned. I was taking clients to take clients, and it really did catch up with me internally, all of the things. So that presented for me, just like to share my experience, wildly. Like I started with pelvic pain. That was weird. And then I would be in and out of the doctors thinking, oh, well, I guess I just have like chronic infections. And then it started with like horrific back pain, and I would have MRIs, and then it was horrific abdominal pain. Oh, maybe I found out I had endometriosis, and I had like wild symptoms. I had really bad episodes of panic attacks for the first time in the middle of the night. I would get 24-hour flus over the weekend and have like horrible fevers, like so visceral. So you're thinking the whole time there's something seriously wrong with me. I would have vertigo and never had that before, and be out for like 2 days. And so I had rashes all over my body, all these like very, very physical symptoms. So it was very frustrating. There was no answers at all and nothing connected to anything. So for me, I think it was just, I had pushed so hard to a point where everything was like the alarms were sounding in my body. I was so disconnected from myself and very like disrespectful of the way that I was pushing myself. And it just like, it forced me. I could no longer do anything. And it was really difficult, obviously, but I see it in retrospect, a necessary experience for me to be where I am today, feeling so differently about my business. And also just having conversations with women, I think it can very much present totally mentally, like total mental fog, depression, anxiety. I've dealt with that as well. And it can be like very crazy random physical symptoms. The amount of women who have said like, I went to the emergency room because I thought I was having a heart attack, but now it's just like this onset of anxiety that no one has answers for. Like, it's just, I don't think that there's any kind of way that I could define it because it's so different. It's just your body all of a sudden saying like, you're not listening to me. I need you to listen.
Yeah, absolutely. It's one of those quotes or something that floats around a lot, but it's like, if you don't make time for rest now, your body or whatever, it's going to force you
Yeah.
to make that time at some point, and it's not going to be as pleasant. So I'm paraphrasing. I'm totally botching it. I always botch those quotes. But yeah, it's true. It's true. If you do overdo it, and a lot of us have that tendency. I mean, this is the Ambitious Bookkeeper podcast. Like, I'm a very ambitious person. I have lots of goals and lots of desires and things that I want to get done. But like, it's been very humbling the past few years to like realize like, I don't know how I accomplished all these things when I was, in my 20s, but I know I didn't sleep enough. There's that. Drank way too much caffeine, but like now it's just not feasible if I'm truly taking care of myself. And that's something that I think a lot of us are coming to grips with in our 30s, 40s of like, actually, I don't think we're meant to try to do this all, right? So I try to, I coach a lot of bookkeepers and accountants on like starting a business and growing a business. And one of the main things, like, I love getting in with them at the very beginning, like when they're just kind of in the idea stage, so I can arm them with like these tools of like, let's really figure out what you want out of this so that you don't end up in a burnout situation, because it is very easy to just take on clients because you want clients or you need clients. And then, like you said, if you're a people pleaser, which a lot of us are, especially if you were in corporate, and that's how I advanced in corporate. I just said yes to every project, even though I didn't really have the time.
Yeah, I think especially when you come from a corporate background and then you go into entrepreneurship. So that isn't typically my experience because I have been very entrepreneurial. I've had positions in employment. I'd say I'm still very much an entrepreneur at heart and probably am not a good employee, but I have worked with so many women who have come from that space, and there's a level of structure that you're kind of given. There's also like these validation feedback loops of like, you're doing a good job, you're going in the right direction. These are your projects. Once you get these projects done, like, you're good, or these are your tasks for the day, like check out whatever. You go into entrepreneurship and everything changes. All of a sudden you're the adult in charge and your brain is like, oh, wait a second, right? There's the employee, the boss, you're everything, especially as a solopreneur. And that's, entrepreneurship is a trial by fire with personal development, because all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, I don't have these boundaries with myself. I don't have maybe a certain level of devotion or discipline that I need to do this, because I'm the only person who's going to be let down, or I'm the only person who I have to answer to. And there's consequences, of course, but that's not, I feel like as women, we are more scared to inconvenience other people than to inconvenience ourselves. So then we run into all these issues. And that's where, there's a basis of my work in that, where women all of a sudden are like, I feel like I'm doing, the right thing, or they do everything and they're not really doing any of the needle moving actions in their business. So there's just like a lot of things that can go sideways when we make that transition.
Yeah, absolutely. What is one of the first things that, when you work with someone starting or growing their business, honestly, like, what's one of the first things that you look at as like, let's figure this out and then move on to the next whatever roadblock we have?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends on the person because my personality, and there's many people that I work with that are very scrappy. They're happy to take messy action. They're happy to like trial and test and make mistakes and fail forward. I also work with women who are in high level corporate positions and they want to be consultants on the side, or they want to be fractional, like CMOs or something, or just like something. And those women particularly, I feel really struggle with being like, wait, you don't have like a timeline or criteria for me, or like, what are my next? So it really depends. First of all, you have to know yourself, but the only way that you're going to get clarity is by taking action when you're an entrepreneur. So there is something to be said about just moving and trying things. And if you make a decision that's wrong, at least you're that much closer to making the right one. Because I think a lot of women actually do get stuck there. They're overthinking a lot of decisions. Everything has to be perfect. I need to have everything, all my ducks in a row before I ever take on a client. What if somebody like pays me and I like can't deliver and they're upset? It's like all of this stuff. So
Yeah.
again, it's much more like, okay, we're going to go down to the basics of this is the road that you want to go down. Why? Let's be really clear about why you want this, because if they're not clear on that, there's no point in building a business, because you're going to get pulled in so many different directions and you're going to, like follow the next shiny object and really not get where you want to go. So that's certainly like where I start. And then as we go through taking action, there's obviously all of those other things that tend to pop up that we want to work through.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree with that. Like figuring out why you actually want to do that, because when it gets tough, it's going to be really hard to keep going with if you aren't rooted in that why. So that is definitely a big one. One of the things that comes up a lot, obviously every type of business, not just bookkeepers and accountants,
Yeah.
but like everything that you just said was like, yes, I see that so much. And that's how I was at the beginning too. And I think that's why it's like, I love helping people through these roadblocks, because it's like, I was there too. And I did get through them. And sometimes I backslide.
Yes, we all do.
But now we have the tools to like get back on track. And it is really great accountability to help other people get through it too, because it's like, I got to practice what I preach.
100%. Yeah.
But yeah, one of the things on the list was mindset around pricing and selling. And that is one area that is a huge issue for so many bookkeepers and accountants, because it's like, there's so much that goes into it. But can we dive into
Oh my
that
God.
topic today?
This is my favorite thing to talk about. I'm like vibrating. Yeah, I talk about this all the time, whether it be in content or with clients, because obviously in my experience as an entrepreneur, I have been through the fire with pricing and devaluing and over delivering and dealing with conversations when you have clients that are pushing back, or clients that are like preemptively projecting at you like, oh my gosh, like I really hope you don't raise your prices ever because I won't be able to. Oh my gosh. So I deal with this with clients all the time, right? When you have a business, you're going to have to be equipped to have confident and empowering conversations around money. And so I know it's really hard for people. But when it comes, I mean, I could start anywhere. I guess at the beginning of your business, it is tough, because you are starting out and you are, in fact, at times, maybe you're not walking into the experience charging premium pricing. And so what happens often is I have people walk into my world and they have some traction in their business. They have a client roster, except their clients are at different price points or not paying enough for, the level of value that they're giving. And they're like, well, I want to scale my business, but I don't know what to do. When in fact, we really just need to work on the pricing. So as an example of how this can work, and I understand that it's so scary for people, but one of the things like we have to know as entrepreneurs is that we're serving people with the things that we bring to the table. So if you're a bookkeeper, for instance, first of all, as entrepreneurs and business owners, like we need you. It's a necessity. It's not even like this is a luxury item. It's something that is so needed. So making sure that your mindset is strong around sales. Sales is not sleazy and it's not, this audacious thing. It's very much in service, and you are not being paid directly often just for your time, but you're also to be compensated for all of the experience, the school, the time that you've put into that moment to be able to provide that service. And I think sometimes we get that wrong as well when we're starting out. And if you're someone who has that, like, newly established business and you're at that place where you know that you're not charging enough, you need to make a change. That is where you really do have to come into your personal power and know that oftentimes, as you grow and scale a business, there will be moments where you have to make space for new, better, higher level, more aligned clients to come in. And we often do that by raising our prices. And there's so many, I understand that women get so much resistance around this, but there's also so many ways that you can have really confident, empowering conversations with clients about this. And they're like really excited to stick around with you too. When you think about the people that you pay for any kind of services, I'm sure you can think of an example of someone you've been with for a long time. You love what they do, the work they do for you, and they've raised their prices consistently, or at least on like a regular basis. And you weren't loyal to their prices, you were loyal to them and you stayed with them. And at the end of the day, when clients leave too, we have to know that that's not about us. It's not about our value or our worth as people. We cannot be tethering our services to that. So that, geez, I could just keep going. I don't want to take up all your podcast time, but there's a lot there. I'll give a quick like real life example. I have this client I've worked with for a really long time, and she had that issue where her business is growing. She's only has so much room, and she has a lot of staggered pricing because of the way that her business has exploded in the last year or whatever. And she was very nervous to up her prices and streamline things. So we did that as of May 1st, reluctantly, but excitedly, and worked on the conversation and the confidence around that. And she was really preparing for the worst. Like, okay, if this many people leave, then I'll be able to do X, Y, and Z. And what happened was she did that. All of the clients stayed, all of the prices raised. And then she signed multiple new clients at the new price points the second week. And I think there's something to be said about when you value yourself and your services, people value you more. So, effectively in 2 weeks, she like increased her monthly income by a third. And I was like, okay, so you understand when we do this next time, we're going to be okay.
Yeah.
But with women, especially, I think it's really hard because sometimes we're passionate about what we do. And, when people are giving us in exchange for our services money, we tend to be like tethering our personal worth and what it means about us. And that can be detrimental to our business.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I love all of that so much. So many thoughts were like bouncing around in my head about, I've had similar experiences coaching other bookkeepers with the price increase. And it's like, we do the exercise of like, okay, if you increase everybody by like 5%, you're going to get this much back in your business. And most likely all those people will stay. But let's look at it to see if like half the people leave, then you're freed up to like bring on new clients. And so it really is a win-win situation ultimately, but it's so scary.
I guess I totally understand, because even to this day, I know it in my heart. I've done it so many times. I'm comfortable having the conversations, but in the same vein, it never doesn't feel uncomfortable. Like it always will. I think once you just do it and you see the evidence that, everything isn't going to burn to the ground, and you don't make it mean anything about you, whatever happens, then it's easier then to continue doing it. I certainly think it's difficult for women to kind of, and I think we're just naturally like, okay, what's the worst case scenario when we should be looking at? The worst case scenario is you make space for so much more.
Exactly. And the other part of it too, I come across this a lot, and I'm guilty of it as well, of like knowing that there's a client that we need to offboard or whatever, but you still are like, but I just want to help this client. Like they really do need me. And it's like, and they maybe value you, maybe not so much, but like we just get so wrapped up in like the success of our clients too, as bookkeepers, of like, if I don't help them, no one will. And it's not true.
all the stories we tell ourselves, right? Honestly, I think like anyone listening to this, whatever business they're in, they probably really do care about those clients that, that if you're going to evolve, they probably like can't or won't fit with you. And you get kind of running all those narratives in your mind around, oh, I just want to like reward them for being there and I just want to,
or see it through. Like I have this one that she's kind of on the brink of like
yeah,
closing down, and I'm like, well, she's
I
about to
just
close. I
here.
just want to get her to that point, or like maybe she'll turn it around, and then I can easily be like, all right, now you need to hire someone in house, like, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's where like that self leadership comes in. And that whole thing I was talking about, the paradox of the employee and the kind of like business owner. And it's difficult. However, it depends on your goals too, because if everything in your business is functioning entirely as you want and you're not really making changes and it doesn't affect you, fine. But most likely there's a reason that you're having those feelings about that client. So many of us do. It's just part of being a business owner. And it doesn't mean anything about you or that person. However, I think it's also important to come back to being kind of like in your CEO mode and going, okay, well, am I making a decision that is going to accelerate and benefit my business? Or am I making a decision that is going to be easier for my ego in this moment? Because I find we come to that little crossroads very often as entrepreneurs. I've made both of those decisions all of the time. I made so many of those and gone the wrong way. However, when you have goals to get to a certain level in your business, or you want to truly like be aligned, also, it might not even have to do with price. We have to like put our little leadership hat on and be like, am I serving my, self that really just wants this person to like me? Or am I serving my business where I need to make this decision because it's going to get me closer to what I want as a whole? Right.
Yeah. I relate to that so much. And I also like when you start to add team, sometimes those business decisions become clearer and easier to make, like the tough decisions, because it's like now my team is relying on me to lead for one and set the example. And then the other part of it too is it's like you become like a protector of your team and of their time and like their joy around, if that stuff matters to you. I guess I should caveat. That's how I feel. I'm like, I want my team to enjoy what they're doing and enjoy all the clients we work with. And if I don't enjoy working with this client, like I'm not going to put this on them. So it's like you're also like you get to this point where like you're protecting the team as well. So sometimes those decisions become easier, or it forces you to kind of like make them faster before things kind of unravel. So there's multiple benefits of having a team, but sometimes that stresses people out. They're like, I don't want a team relying on me. But like for me, it's good accountability in those situations.
I know. I like as you're saying that, I'm thinking in my mind, because my experience is mostly as a solopreneur. I've had people kind of working contractually. However, as you say, it makes it easier. You make decisions faster, and maybe it's not easier, but I feel forced to because I'm taking care of, the greater vision. And it's such a mirror to what mentorship is and what I do, with the clients that I work with, and also why I always have kind of had or tried to have a mentor in my corner too, because when you are held to a certain standard, or that you have someone to report back to who's going to keep you accountable to your potential and your big goals of the business, you are so much more likely to make those decisions in the right way and make them faster.
Yeah. And just having someone in your corner rooting for you also helps, because it's like, and you can talk through like, how am I going to say this? How am I going to word it? And like practice it and stuff. There's many benefits to working with a mentor in that capacity, of course. But okay. So can we we didn't really talk about motherhood in
I know.
entrepreneurship. And I feel like we definitely need to. So you're a newish mom. Is a boy, a girl?
It's a boy. Yeah,
A
he's
boy. Okay.
almost till 9 months shortly.
All right. So coming up on a year. Talk to us about that first year in business with a new baby, because I know someone's listening that's like, I want to do my business, but I don't know how to get it all done.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be completely candid and honest. At the beginning of 2023, like I'm sure many people listening to this and like yourself, I'm super ambitious. I have big goals. I've always been really career oriented just as a person. And so I've always wanted to be a mom, but I've also always known that I wanted to have seasons and I wanted to kind of plan things out. Of course, we know that that doesn't always happen. So my husband and I literally finished a whole conversation as we do every new year. Are we going to wait this year? You know, what are our plans? What are our big goals? And we had decided that. And the next day I took a pregnancy test and found out I was expecting. So the universe has a sense of humor. And obviously it was such a big blessing. However, pregnancy was extremely difficult for me. Like I was just very ill, very not myself, very depressed. And I'm sure that there's probably many women that can relate to that as well. So I don't think of it as just new mom kind of experience the last 8.5 months, but even the pregnancy itself and what that changed in my business was a lot. And I mean, I just want to like give props to all of the mothers out there, because it is not just like that having a baby and then you have a baby. It's all the other parts of it too. I certainly struggled because also I was pivoting out of a business that required me to be very physical, you know, like riding horses and doing all of that all the time. So losing that autonomy and ability in some ways was very difficult. However, it forced me to accelerate what I was doing with business coaching.
Mhm.
And I really, really thrived with that because I could, you know, it didn't require me to be physical. And I was really just trying to give myself grace and compassion because I did have to, you know, cancel on things and I did have to not be in my best energy all the time. And I think it's the biggest struggle for me personally and what I often am coaching clients through. And I think you mentioned it when we talked about burnout is like intentional rest. And, you know, when you don't necessarily do it, your body will force you to. However, there's this, you know, at least in my experience and what I experience with other women that I work with is that we can force ourselves to rest. However, there's an internal narrative that usually is happening there when we're resting. It's like, well, I'm not being productive enough. I'm going to force myself to rest, but what am I actually getting done today? Like, what do I need to do next? Blah, blah, blah. And if you're a mom of multiple children, well, like, cool if you go sit down for 10 minutes, but you're just like, I can't believe I'm taking this 10 minutes. I could be doing something. I could be getting the dishes done. I could be taking a shower. So it really does come down to, again, like everything I kind of teach and talk about is, well, we need to kind of find something that is going to re-energize you, and forcing yourself to rest and then beating yourself up for resting is not resting. So that's kind of on the pregnancy front. I struggled with that. I'm a mover. I'm always doing stuff. So it was very difficult becoming a new mom and having no sleep. And, you know, my husband has a very grueling job schedule because we live in the country as well. So he has to get up really early in the mornings to travel. So I was doing nighttime all by myself. And he slept like I had no sleep at all. So for that, I think, again, it's just, I remember crying. I melted down on a call that I had in a mastermind that I'm in. Because little old me over here, like with like my 2-month-old in a mastermind, like, I gotta keep going. And it was just this, what I did the whole time throughout pregnancy and kind of up to that point was resist. I was resisting that I couldn't have it all at the same time. And so my advice for any women, because what changed after that was I kind of, you know, I leaned on my circle for support, but what I did was surrender. You know, what I wanted to not do was accept the fact that I couldn't do everything that I was doing before.
Yeah.
And I feel like that was the hardest part for me becoming a mom was I was resisting and trying to be all these things and do all these things. And that in and of itself was more exhausting than just accepting the season, being compassionate towards myself, and then surrendering and knowing, okay, how can I, instead of feeling awful when I'm doing my work because I'm not with baby, and then feeling awful when I'm with baby because I'm not doing my work? How can I just be so grateful that I am having this experience? Can I prioritize myself? I'm the vehicle for my success, and like lean back into that acceptance. And like I mentioned, it was extremely hard. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
I'm over of acceptance, but there's still days where I run up against that wall. And I'm sure there's lots of moms that run up against it too. Like, if I had XYZ or more time freedom or more this or more that, and we can easily get in that cycle of like getting a little bit frustrated with her. Honestly, the worst kind of combatant that you have is yourself when you become a mom. Speaking from personal experience, that's all I can say, because I'm obviously a very new mom, but I think that is the hardest thing to navigate. And so you have to remember that, like, you are probably in some ways, you're probably the hardest on yourself. You're probably putting the most pressure on yourself. Like, how can you, instead of being that combatant, like I mentioned, how can you like really, really, really almost nurture yourself and rebuild an entirely new relationship? I think as challenging as it has been as a female entrepreneur and having baby and then continuing to work, motherhood has really like opened up a new side of me that I didn't even know existed. When you're in the fog of it, especially at the beginning, I remember telling myself, like, when people would say that to me, well, you're in the thick of it, you're in the fog. And I was like, I'm not in the fog. I'm just like,
I resist the fog.
oh my God, like I was wild because I was, and what you go through and what you do and what you actually are capable of is insane. And I mean that now, like as anyone who's a mother at all or a woman running her own business, it's
Mhm.
like give yourself some credit because you're a freaking superhuman. And I don't think you can't have it all. I just think that you can't have it all exactly at the same time. And
Mhm.
so instead of fighting that, it's really, really helpful to surrender to the beauty of the fact that you have the capacity to hold so much space for things that you love in your heart. And that's what I kept telling myself.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. I started my business when I had a almost 1 year old. And then I found out I was pregnant. So then I like kind of launched my big business while I was pregnant with a toddler. And then I have an older child too. She's about to graduate high school. And at the time she was 10. And so she was in school, but I had the little ones, and like being pregnant, I was like, I had a decent, not too difficult pregnancy, that last one, but my first two, my girls, I worked during those pregnancies in corporate and they were rough. And it's like, I've blocked half of that out of my memory at
Right?
this
How do you
point.
survive it? It's wild.
But yeah, and then I thought that I was like, oh, they say like the third one is like nothing, like, because you already have two, like it'll just be like barely
Aw.
an addition. That was not the case for me because they were so close in age. It was almost like having twins. And so I basically put my business on pause for the first entire year of his life after he was born. So like I did all this work to like launch it and like gain a few clients. And then I had to just take a break. I think I maintained like 1 or 2 clients while he was a baby, but it was so hard. And that whole first year was just a blur. And then it got to the point where I was like, okay, he's a year old. I can do this. But yeah, I don't believe the whole like, oh, the third one is like nothing. Maybe it is if they're all already like in the same age range, but
Yeah.
I had a different experience for sure.
I honestly think everyone does, right? Like it's so different. And after having a child, I recognize that you can't really compare anyone's experience because we're all so like it's so different. There's so many nuances to our lives and our routines and how we live them. So
And each
that being
child and what
said,
they need.
yeah,
Like,
I think it's a whole other podcast episode.
oh yeah, for sure.
For sure.
Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, so where can people connect with you if they want to learn more about your coaching? Or I know you have a podcast, the I'll Admit podcast. I've been listening to that. So I definitely recommend listening. We'll link it in the show notes. But where's the best place for people to connect with you online?
Yeah, probably Instagram because it has links to everything you could possibly need. That's at Jessica Parr, and I'll send it to you. But that's kind of the hub for where I kind of conglomerate, all of the platforms and the podcast. Yeah, I just relaunched it at the end of March after taking a very long hiatus, but I'm excited to be back. I love podcasting and I love having conversations like this. So I'm there too.
Awesome. Yes, we will link all the resources in the show notes. Thank you so much for coming on here and chatting with me. I really appreciate your time. And if you're listening to this and anything resonated in this episode with you, please tag both of us on Instagram. Our handles will be linked in the show notes. And thanks again for listening.
Thank you so much.
Thank you to everyone who helps make this podcast possible. Content and interviews are produced by me, Serena Shoup. Our intro and outro music is written and performed by my brother, Ian Gilliam. Editing is also by Ian using his awesome sound engineering skills along with Descript software. Hosting and publishing is by Buzzsprout. And you can check out the show notes for links to all of these amazing resources and resources mentioned in the episode.
Be ambitious.